Alright, today I'm going to be reviewing CER paragraphs. CER paragraphs do go by a lot of different names, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using the acronym CER, just because I like keeping it consistent, but I will, in this white text right here, which might be a little hard to see, I'm going to have some synonyms for words that other teachers might use to refer to the same vocabulary. Again, for my class, I'm going to keep using C, E, and R. I want to keep it consistent throughout the year. But if you use any of this vocabulary in white, I'm going to understand what you mean, and you should keep it in the back of your mind anyways, because your other teachers might use that vocabulary instead. All right, so starting with CER, let's start with C. Each letter stands for something, and C stands for claim. So a CER paragraph is going to be a paragraph that is analytical. In an essay, it's going to be your body paragraph. And the claim is where you are going to tell me what the paragraph is going to be about. Typically, this is one sentence, and in this sentence, you're going to tell me what the topic is and what your stance on the topic is. I want you to make sure that your claims are clear, and that if there is a question that you're answering, it is answering that question. If it's part of a larger essay, so it's like one body paragraph in like 5 or 6 paragraphs, or maybe 4, you're not exactly going to be answering a specific question because your thesis answers the essay question, but your claim is going to answer kind of like a sub-question that is related to your main question that will help you answer the essay question overall. And other teachers also often call this the topic sentence for T, or sometimes they also call it the subject sentence. So what is this paragraph about? I do think that, so for the other 2 letters of the acronym E and R, I'm going to give you a bunch of sentence starters, but for claim, you really are going to be having a unique claim for pretty much every paragraph. And if you think back to in my class how we rearranged the words from our do now questions into, like answer or sentence starters, that's basically what I want you to do with the claim. All right. Also, make sure that your claim sentence aligns with your thesis statement for your essay. Next up in the acronym is E, and E stands for evidence. I would say that most teachers that I've talked to say evidence is evidence, but I do have some other vocabulary on the bottom. Evidence is going to be anything you're using to support your claim. So this could be, in English class, typically we're going to be using quotes. Sometimes you can use a paraphrase. I would suggest that you don't use a summary in English class because, I don't know, it's just not my preference. It's a little too vague for me, but obviously for different classes, your different teachers are going to require different things. And one of your other teachers might say, like, for evidence, we are going to use a summary, and that is totally fine. Remember, again, if you want a good grade, you should always ask your teacher what they are looking for and look at the rubric if you get one. All right. Your evidence does not need to always be the best possible evidence. The analogy I like to use is, like we all have a dream car in our minds. For me, it's a red Miata, but I think that as long as you have a vehicle that gets you from point A to point B, it's all good. And that's the same thing with evidence. As long as you have a quote or a paraphrase or a detail or a fact or a statistic that supports your answer and helps you answer the question, it doesn't need to be the best one ever, and you don't need to spend like ages and ages looking for the best possible quote in a book, especially when you have limited time for a test. However, do try to pick the best possible evidence. If you pick bad evidence, your job gets a lot harder in the rest of the paragraph trying to carry that dead weight. So again, try your best to find the best evidence possible, but if it doesn't work out, make sure you remember, as long as it works, it's good. Some other teachers call this the support detail, so sometimes they call it like a detail that supports your claim, topic, sentence, whatever. Other teachers call it the example, so the example you're using to answer the question, support your argument. For evidence, I do have a couple of formulaic sentence starters that are excellent to use throughout the year. Here is just some generic ones for English class, like for instance. For instance, this. On page blank, and then you put the quote here. Sometimes it's going to be a character saying something, so instead of the author, you can say, let me go the other way around. Sometimes it's a character that's saying something, so I would want you to say, the character blank states that. But sometimes it's just the author stating something, and in that situation, I would want you to say, author states that. And please, please, please use correct names, especially if you know them, which is, I would say, 99% of the time in English class, you're going to know who the author is or who the character is. Please use your names. Don't say like it. That's kind of rude. And last but not least, for the last part, for reasoning. So in English class, this is the part that I'm going to be looking at with the biggest magnifying glass when I'm grading your essays. Reasoning is where you're connecting your evidence back to your claim. Think of it as you are using your evidence as a tool to help you prove your claim to your audience. In order to do this, you're going to be using two different skills, analysis and justification. So in analysis, you are breaking apart a topic into easier chunks. I would say usually, let's say I used a quote. In my analysis section, I would break down that quote to make it easier to understand. Let's say I paraphrased. In the analysis section, I would break down the paraphrase and, make it easier to understand, break it down into smaller chunks that I can play around with for the last part, which is justification. The justification part, you're going to show or prove your points, and again, use all those different puzzle pieces that you've got, your evidence, your analysis of the evidence, put it all together with the claim in order to make a bigger point. There are a lot of different words that teachers use to describe this section, and I'm going to go through all of them. If you use any of these, I'm going to understand what you're saying, but just for the sake of my class and my worksheets and stuff like that, I'm going to keep using reasoning just because I don't want to go back and change everything. But here it is. So the reasoning section is sometimes called the elaboration section, where you're elaborating, stretching out, right? Sometimes it's called the commentary, so you're leaving commentary on your evidence and your claim, right? Sometimes it's called the explanation section, where you're explaining what's going on. Justification, which I use that word too, and analysis. So again, any of these words work, but again, I'm going to keep using reasoning because that is the easiest for me. And for the reasoning section, I do have a list of sentence starters that you are welcome to use. I would say go for it, use it. But again, as you go along, you might find yourself thinking, I don't want to use these sentence starters. And that's totally okay, as long as you use something better. All right, here's some sentence starters. This is important because I feel like this one's a classic. Feel free to use it whenever you can, because always you're writing should be thinking about the importance of a topic and the importance of a bigger issue, the importance of the book, right? This quote proves that, and then you put something in the blank, because, blank, as a result, and then ... and for that reason. I would say, as I'm reading these justifications, I am looking out for this word. I love it when it shows up. I love the word because it's a classic for a reason. And when I see it, I know I'm about to get into some good analysis or justification. So this is my quick review just for CER paragraphs overall. And I hope if you have any questions, let me know. And feel free to watch this video whenever you do have questions. All right.